What's going on, people in internet land? Kimchi Chris here, and welcome to today's brand new episode of Rock Bliss with Kimchi Chris. And today I am going to tell you a story of epic proportions. So get yourself a snack, push all of your plans aside, and snuggle up with your favorite cover and your favorite cat, because today I'm going to tell you the tale of Louder Than Life 2022. Now, for those unfamiliar with Louder Than Life, basically it's a 4-day rock and metal festival that takes place in Louisville, Kentucky, where a bunch of crazy people gather to watch a bunch of crazy bands. They camp there, they drink there, they fornicate there. It's all kinds of stuff going on, and the lineup usually consists of some good bands that you'd actually want to see. In the past, they've had Guns N' Roses, they've had Cheap Trick, they've had Slayer, they've had Andrew WK, but there's always a really healthy mix of bands you would never ever want to see or never ever want to admit being a fan of. Bands like Papa Roach or Theory of a Dead Man or Nickelback. I don't know that Nickelback's played there, but they seem like they would play there. So basically there's a good mix of quality music and terrible music, but that's okay at a festival because you can't see everyone anyway, so hopefully you can kind of pad your lineup with the good while avoiding the bad. And this year I wanted to go down just for the Saturday of the event, Saturday, September 24th, 2022, of course, because one of my favorite artists of all time was set to take the stage opening for my favorite artist of all time. That's right, Alice Cooper was scheduled to open for Kiss. Now, Rob Zombie was playing between them. I'm cool with Rob Zombie, but I was really there for Alice and Kiss, something that I thought I would never experience in my life, and a lot of people have always wanted to experience that, never been able to do that. So I felt that I needed to jump at this opportunity to take a quick little car trip down there. It's about 2.5 hour drive for me, not too awful bad, totally worth it. And maybe I would have the greatest night of my life. That's not what happened, though. So we are going to start in a place we normally wouldn't start, with a review. But again, this is a story time episode more than anything else. So I drove down the Saturday of the festival. Again, it's not a very long drive, so it's very easy to do. And things started to get bad the second I was in the festival area. Now, of course, traffic was messed up and parking was crazy and things of that nature. I didn't think it would be too terrible to get in because I was getting there in the afternoon on Saturday. I figured a lot of people had gotten there early and a lot of people would be getting there later in the night for Alice and Kiss and Rob. But there were a lot of people getting there exactly when I got there, around 3 or 4, and that's all. It's all well and good. But every business in the area, as a result, offers parking in their parking lots. They charge you a little bit less than the festival charges. So, of course, why would you not take advantage of parking a spot that's going to be easier to get out of, a little bit cheaper, and not that much further of a walk away from the festival? This is where things started to get messy for me to start with. So I pulled in one that was offering $20 parking, not too bad, all things considered. And the giant oaf of a man, he was large, and I'm not trying to body shame here, and if you're a larger individual, that's perfectly fine, but I'm gonna make fun of him because he was rude. So he was a sweaty fat man. He was already screaming at me as I pulled into the area. He's wearing an American flag shirt and sweating up a storm, and he had one of those dumb little hats that all the older guys seem to wear around 4th of July that have the flappy parts on it, and he had some $4.99 Walmart sunglasses on. You know, he was the king of this lot, and it was definitely the most responsibility he's ever had in his life. So he started screaming at me immediately and just flailing his arms. I had no idea what he was talking about, but I was like, all right, I guess I'm gonna park here with the sweaty large man. It's gonna be fine. And I tried to get into my spot that he poorly directed me into, and he didn't like how I was parking. He started screaming at me that there was enough space for an entire car to get in there. Now, mind you, there was maybe a little bit more space than there should be, but he was, again, just screaming. He was just delirious with the power of people parking for $20. I mean, I guess he doesn't have a lot going on in his life, but regardless, he continued to scream, and I readjusted my car. I kept trying to pull it in. He kept screaming, and you know, I wasn't gonna be able to get a lot closer to this car next to me because, you know, those people have to be able to get in. He was having us all back in, so the passenger side was going to be next to their driver's side, of course, right? That's how it works. And I get in, whatever. I felt it was close enough. I didn't care if he was screaming. This man had no power over my life at all. And as I'm giving him the money, he started screaming at me again that, "Who's gonna make someone park an inch from my driver's side? I'm gonna have to crawl through on the passenger side to get in because I don't know how to drive. Do 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 do." So I yanked my 20 bucks out of his hand and said, "You're just being too disrespectful for me to support you in any way, shape, or form." And that wasn't good enough for him. Then he started screaming at the car next to me that I didn't know how to drive and I was an idiot and all these other things. And I just pulled out of there and parked down the road for $20 as well. And by the way, down the road meant literally like 2 doors down at this lovely business that was ran by a family, and they came out and greeted me and thanked me for parking there and told me that they hoped I had a great time seeing Kiss. So I felt great that I supported them, and I was happy that I didn't support the sweaty man with the flappy hat. And at this point, I do want to take a moment to say that even though I'm very angry about a lot of the people I interact with in this episode, and it really bums me out. I wanted to make this episode and have it be a really positive thing. I want everyone to know this is not Louisville in large. You know, I've been there for several shows. I've seen Kiss there before. I've seen Ace Solo. I've seen Alice. I've seen Gwar. I've seen Dreamcatcher. I've seen all kinds of bands there. I've been there a lot in my years, and I've generally had a really great experience there with really nice people, really good food, good shows, good times all around. But something about this festival, man. Something about this terrible, awful, just bland festival. So I started to make my way over, and there were just all types of people going to this thing. Everything from your common person you would see at a Kiss show, and those were honestly the best people there, all the way down to the 70-year-old stoner that just goes to every music festival and the college frat bro type. So you had an interesting mix of people. I guess that makes sense with an interesting mix of bands, but it was at this point I started to get yelled at again by security. They were yelling at all of us that we weren't walking in the correct area. But there were literally no signs telling you where to walk or how to get anywhere, but apparently you weren't supposed to walk on the grass. Now, mind you, there were probably at least 200 to 300 people scattered on this grass walking on it, so plainly this one security guard wasn't doing a great job, but he happened to be really close to me and was just screaming his head off, and this was the worst first impression you could have for a event you were going to. You got screamed at in the parking, got screamed at by security, got screamed at by another security guard in a second. Then I couldn't figure out where I was supposed to go to get my tickets because, again, there's no signs anywhere, and it's a giant area with lines this way, lines that way, people everywhere. And I asked someone that just looked like someone going to the show. They had the wristband on their hand, which proves they picked it up somewhere, or maybe it was mailed to them, I don't know. But regardless, they had been in and out of this event more than once, more than likely, and I asked them where to get tickets, and they also yelled at me. There was a lot of yelling. I don't know what it was. Apparently, I had a sign around my neck that said, "Scream at this man that's just trying to go see his favorite band ever." But after that happened, immediately there was a couple standing right next to the awkward interaction, and they said, "Hey, the box office is right over there." They even commented on how hard it was for them to get their wristbands to get in because there was no signage. So I went over to the box office. Luckily, there wasn't a big line. I had my first positive interaction of the weekend. It was a nice old grandma lady handing out the wristbands amongst other people, but I got in her line because I knew she was going to be the best, and she was super nice, and it made me think, you know, maybe this will be okay. And then I got in line to get in again, got yelled at by security again. Again, these are security people for the festival, you know, rent-a-cop types, not actual police people, but got yelled at again, and eventually made my way in. Luckily, it wasn't too long of a wait, and I was in the festival. And I walked around for a little bit, checking out the festivities, seeing a couple bands here and there, parts of their sets on the various stages, and it started to all kind of wash away, and I said, you know, maybe this is really awesome. Maybe this is going to be as good as it could be. I was wrong. So after I got a lay of the land and located the spots you could buy $15 beers and $50 Kiss shirts and all kinds of other things that you may or may not want to indulge in, I decided to make my way over to the main stages because I did want to get a good spot for Alice Cooper and Kiss later in the night. And the way it was set up was like a lot of music festivals. They had the two main stages side by side, so even when you're waiting at one stage, you can kind of see the other, you can hear the other, depending how close you are. You can't see it super well, but they had giant video monitors. The setup was pretty good, all things considered, for a main stage setup, and I got over there while on the stage next to where I wanted to be. Jerry Cantrell from Alice in Chains was finishing up. Sounded fine. I'm not a big fan of that band, but sounded like Alice in Chains. What was weird is that they were playing mostly Alice in Chains songs, and I know they had a full set the next night, so maybe they weren't going to play those songs the next night, or maybe he was just going to do them both times. But regardless, he's a good guitarist, and it was fine. It was very peaceful. Crowd was peaceful at that point. And then on my stage, Ghostemane went on. Someone's just singing outside and they sound like they're having a good time. I kind of wish I was as happy as them right now. Now, I'm going to assume that most of you are not super familiar with Ghostemane, and honestly, I'm not super duper familiar with him myself, but basically he started out as a rapper and now he's kind of including a lot of nu metal and Marilyn Manson influence in his music. A lot of parts vocally you can just tell this guy really wants to be Marilyn Manson, and that kind of fits his visual aesthetic as well. And you know, it is what it is. It wasn't something really designed for me. I'm not the target demographic for that. But his set was okay. The audience was already becoming a bit of an issue. Lots of crowd surfing, lots of moshing around, lots of ridiculousness like that. But again, this was Ghostemane's audience, not what was going to stay there for Alice and Kiss, I was pretty sure. And I know I sound like an old man complaining about the crowd, but you know, this is going to become a prevalent theme here very, very soon. So when his set was done, a lot of the audience started to vacate the area, which was great because I kind of shoved my way up to the front and ended up about the equivalent of like 6 or 7 rows from the stage. And at this point, there was going to be one more band on the other stage, and then Alice Cooper was going to take the stage, and it was going to be great. Now, the other band that was playing on the other stage that we got to hear but didn't see too well was Chevelle, and Chevelle is terrible. They are absolutely terrible. I went into this knowing that I'd hear everything they were doing and not having a strong opinion on them. They're just super boring and have always just kind of faded in the background as another radio rock band. And guess what? That's exactly what they are. There was nothing, and I mean nothing interesting or distinguishing about them. They were just another radio rock band. If you heard them in a bar in the background while you were getting a Natty Light, you wouldn't think about them twice, but since they were on this big stage, they have a larger fan base now. But whatever, they were background noise. Unfortunately, they were very, very loud. I know I sound like an old man on this, I sound like a boomer, but I'm complaining about moshers and a band being loud. Apparently, I'm getting old before my time. But they were noticeably louder than Ghostemane or Jerry Cantrell or foreshadowing any of the other artists that night. So it was very, very interesting. But this was the time of the night too where I started to get really, really annoyed by smoke. Everyone in that crowd was smoking something, be it cigarettes, be it weed, be it vapes, whatever. And it was just everywhere. It was just everywhere. I was thankful that I didn't have asthma. I probably, you know, got cancer or asthma or something by the end of that night, but whatever, it was what it was and I had to deal with it. This was also the time, since we weren't actively watching the band in my area, where I started to really realize how terrible the crowd was around me. I did not like 95% of the people around me. There were people just screaming stuff, just stuff. You know, not cheering for the bands or anything, just random things, lots of obscenities. That's fine, I don't really care. It doesn't offend me, but it was just annoying. There was also this super, super high girl next to me. And I said high, not hot. Definitely not hot. And she was just out of her mind and dancing around, and she was the kind of the one you just don't want to make eye contact with at these type of things, but eventually we unfortunately made eye contact, and she wanted to buy my water bottle off of me. Now, I was in this giant crowd where I can't get out, so I'm guarding this water with my life, and I told her, no, I'm gonna hold on to it. And she screamed at me, why won't you sell your half-drank water bottle to me? I don't care about the diseases you can give me. She didn't say the diseases part, but she did scream at me as to why I wouldn't sell it to her, and I just had to tell her straight up, your money is not as valuable to me as this water is right now. I have a pretty good job. I'm not that concerned about that. She didn't like that response, but she eventually kind of faded away, so it's all good. It was also around this time where some other really, really, really stoned girl like grabbed my hair and was asking me to braid it. I told her to get her hands off of me. I know it's a big crowd and you're gonna touch people that you don't want to touch, but I don't know, these people just didn't understand boundaries at all. No boundaries. People say that people don't understand boundaries at anime conventions and such. Trust me, this Louder Than Life festival, they did not understand boundaries. So after what seemed like 100,000 years, Chevelle was finally done, and it was time for Alice Cooper, and I thought things were just going to be amazing from there. So Alice and his band took the stage, and it was glorious for like 2 songs. 2 songs, it was glorious. They sounded good, they looked good. Getting to see Kane in the band now was a really cool thing. I do miss Nita, but you know, it was really cool. The stage show is pretty much the same one he's been using for the last couple years. The set list was kind of similar while it was slimmed down for a festival lineup, and he did have a few songs in there I hadn't seen him play super recently, like Go to Hell and Freedom, so that was pretty cool to see. But the problem was the crowd. The crowd really decided to be the type of crowd they wanted to be starting about 2 or 3 songs into the set. And there were just like 1,000 crowd surfers. 1,000. Like after 67 of them were done, another 79 would come. I mean, I'm not even exaggerating. I'm not even exaggerating. If you were there, you know what I'm talking about. There were just so many, and they were all aiming for the front. So if you were in the front, you got hit by all of them. There were so many people in pain. We were just getting hurt up there. Everyone that was in the front wasn't enjoying this. Nobody around me seemed to enjoy the situation. Sure, those people wanted to do their crowd surfing, but they were hurting a lot of people in the front, like a lot. It was a very painful show. It was a very intense show. There were times I didn't even know what song was going on. So it was not a good time, because you were just having to turn around, watch your back. Of course, the whole time this was going, people were screaming things like, "We got another! Fire in the hole! Look out for that one! Make sure to grab that one inappropriately!" It wasn't good. It was a very weird thing, and I just don't understand the culture of all of that. It was not a good time. It was not a good time, and I was already very, very irritated, but we made it through Alice's set, and I figured, you know, maybe we've reached the pinnacle of this crowd surfing thing. Maybe it's over. There weren't any people moshing. That was kind of weird, but the crowd surfing it really took away from the show. Show was great. Alice and his band were great. There's not a whole lot more I can say about that. If you've seen Alice in the last couple of years, be it after the pandemic or before it, you have an idea of what I saw, and it was great. It was absolutely amazing. The stage show never disappoints. The music never disappoints, and I hope Alice does this until he's, you know, 1,000 years old, because I think he might actually live to be 1,000. But the crowd really tried to ruin an otherwise great show. So then Rob Zombie went on, and we could see it on the video screens. We could hear it, of course. Seemed like it was a great show. I've seen Rob before. I'm not super hardcore into his music. I mean, I really do enjoy it, but you know, I wanted to stay at my stage to get a good spot for Kiss, because at this point I had been shoved up to what was essentially like equivalent of like a 3rd or 4th row center. It was great. I was so pumped to see Kiss, and you know, Rob brought the hits. He does what he does. He got the crowd going like crazy. He's a good front man. He played everything you'd expect. Dragula, Living Dead Girl, House of a Thousand Corpses, all the big songs. And then he of course had to mention that it was very exciting to be playing between Alice and Kiss. He was the only one out of all 3 acts that mentioned the other acts, so that was pretty cool. On that note though, backtracking for a second, during Alice's set, you could see Tommy Thayer on the side watching a good chunk of it. I don't think he finished watching it because he had to, you know, go and start getting ready, but he was on there bobbing his head and watching, and looked like he was smiling, so that was a cool thing. But Rob was good. John Five, of course, is a great guitarist that doesn't really get to shine through with Rob's band, but if you get to see John Five solo or look up his solo work, you know exactly what I mean. One of the greatest living guitarists in existence. So always cool to get to see them on stage, even if it was from a video monitor. There were people even crowd surfing in our area, even though it wasn't near the stage, but it wasn't too awful bad, and it was fine. It's kind of a chill way to see Rob, one of the most chill ways you'll ever get to see Rob, and you know, when he was done, it was time for the greatest band in the world, Kiss. And Kiss went on like 3 seconds after Rob was done. That's kind of how these stages worked, as one band would end and another would start immediately. So it was weird because there wasn't a huge amount of build-up. They of course played Rock and Roll by Led Zeppelin over the PA, and then they were on, just like always, and they came on in a bombastic style as they always do, very similar to the rest of the End of the Road tour, and the set list was exactly what you would expect it to be. They dropped a few songs with it being a slightly shorter set for a festival circuit. Now, what's weird about that would be the choices of what songs they dropped, because they dropped Deuce but kept Do You Love Me in there, for example. That's very weird to me, and especially keeping it placed in the encore for a more casual audience, but I digress. They took Deuce out. I can't remember if Tears Are Falling was a staple at this point, but that wasn't there either. Neither was Beth, but otherwise it was a pretty much full set for the most part. They were on stage something like an hour and 45 minutes-ish, I would say, something like that. So a little bit shorter, but not too much shorter. And it was a great time. The stage was really cool to see on that smaller stage as well, because this wasn't a full Kiss stage. It was slightly smaller. So of course the production was dumbed down just a little bit. So it was kind of like seeing them in a more intimate setting, even though there were way more people there than you would normally have at a Kiss show with that giant field of people. And that brings us to our next situation. The people, the people, the people. I hate the audience at this festival. I really do hate them. I don't hate the people that were actually there to watch the music. It was more the casual bros looking for a good, violent time. So when Kiss went on, things seemed good. The seas seemed to have settled. And then, maybe 3 or 4 songs into the set, things just erupted again. So many crowd surfers, so many. It was a ridiculous amount of crowd surfers. So many fights and almost fights around me in the crowd. That also had been happening throughout the day. I didn't bring that up till now, but there were a lot of fights and almost fights between people, because apparently these are some real subhuman types that go to Louder Than Life. And it was funny because everyone that was wearing a Kiss shirt, or an Alice Cooper shirt for that matter, was fine for the most part. It was very much your typical audience you would see at a Kiss show, but all of these bros just looking to do whatever were ruining the time for everyone. Just, again, you have no idea of how annoying it is trying to watch Kiss when there's a giant human body being thrown over you, and you've got to try to catch it or it's going to fall on your head. Now, a lot of people did fall to the ground, and you know what? This is going to sound so mean. I kind of laughed at those situations because they put themselves in a bad situation they didn't have to put themselves in, and then they got hurt. I'm a bad person. But there were parts of the show that I knew were coming up because I know the show so well, with pyro and explosions and specific songs and things like that, that I just couldn't enjoy because I was having to be on alert the whole time. I was battle ready the whole time, and there were so many people that had waited so long to be up front for Kiss that just had to ditch the area a couple songs into the set because they couldn't take it anymore. There was a poor lady that had been wheeled up there in a wheelchair that just couldn't make it. They eventually had to get her out with security. There was another girl that crowd surfed to the front and crowd surfed her wheelchair. I'm not even kidding you. When I turned around and saw a wheelchair being crowd surfed to the front, I was just like, oh, this is the time I finally get seriously hurt. Good. And I know I sound like an old man complaining about people crowd surfing and fighting and yelling things and touching me, but it was really annoying. It really hindered the experience of the show. This should have been one of the greatest shows of my life because both Kiss and Alice really were on fire that night. They were great, and it was my first time seeing Kiss post-pandemic, so I was really excited about it, but it's hard to enjoy your favorite band when a sweaty, shirtless, hairy man is trying to grab you and hug you the whole time. It didn't happen the whole time, but that definitely happened at one point. I had to remove his arm from me twice. The third time I looked at him and said, please stop touching me. Again, similar to the girl wanting to braid my hair earlier. Just these people knew zero boundaries. So after the show, I just kind of left and I was angry. And I was going to make this episode the very next day because I was just so mad at this whole experience that was a weird mix of good and bad, because what I got to watch of Alice and Kiss, it was amazing. Absolutely amazing. Seeing these legends on stage together on the same night is something I never thought I would experience in my life. Something that the bands would never give us, but a festival decided to give us. But it was just ruined by all of these just awful, awful, awful individuals. Louder Than Life, I am never going back to you. It's just not happening. Never going back. What a terrible experience to ruin an otherwise great stage performance and production from two of my favorite bands. Actually, my favorite band with one of my other favorites. And again, Rob was good. You know? So, wow, you really have a way of sucking the fun out of a great event, Louder Than Life. Thanks for ruining that time and making me question if it was even worth going to. And I'll be honest, when I look at this down the road, it probably was worth going to just to see those two on stage, but it was just a dang mess, and I'm never going back to this festival. So with all that being said, did you go to Louder Than Life this year? Have you been in the past? Maybe you've had an equally terrible experience seeing a band at a festival or in a weird environment. Let me know in the comments down below. And if you are new around here and somehow this negativity didn't scare you away, usually we're a lot more positive on this channel, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification so you get the updates, make sure to thumbs up the video and all that other fun stuff. Again, my name is Kimchi Chris. This has been Rock Bliss with Kimchi Chris, and I will see all of you on the next episode.